the classiest carry guns. That's what we're going to talk about today on Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. Trying a different format, going to put the bio in at the end. But today's really just a fun chat about what I think are some of the classiest carry guns. Just recorded a more, what I would say, important, critical one on shooting one-handed, strong hand only, weak hand only. So I thought it would be good to just have a nice lighthearted chat about some classy carry guns. I will say I'm your host, Michael Melito. I am a servant of God and a follower of Jesus Christ. That's number one in my life, and everything, hopefully, that I do in this podcast is no different. So, gunfighters, let's be circumspect. Let's consider, reason together. What are some of the classiest carry guns? Guns with panache. I was originally going to make that kind of the first part of the title, but I realized that I don't think panache is really common vernacular for a lot of people. I think classy carry guns will get the point across, but guns with panache, guns with style, guns a little bit more refined. However you want to state that or think about that, I think you get the point. My wife will commonly say bougie, which I guess not really a term that I say, but she doesn't really say panache. So, to each his own, or her own. Let's get into it. Enough banter about vernacular. One that immediately comes to mind. Kind of the classic. It gets a shoe in. The Walther PPK. It's James Bond's gun, right? It gets a shoe in. It's classy. Tuxedo and martinis. Not a world that I particularly like to live in, but hey, nobody's going to argue that the PPK is not a classy gun. It's classy looking. I will also say that none of the guns on here are polymer framed. I don't think they go hand in hand. I think that classic metal on metal, a little bit more refined, just a little bit more classy. The Walther PPK definitely has that. Are there more practical options? Are there more powerful options? Are there lighter options? Are there more reliable options? Yes to all of those. But nobody's going to argue that the PPK is not classy. If you wanted it even more unique, I'd say get it in the 32 rather than the 380. But it's a classy gun. I like stainless. I'd probably go stainless, but I mean, get whatever you want. It's a PPK. Like all kinds of classy grips for them. It gets a shoe in. Again, James Bond. Now let's talk about what I would consider a newer, more practical version of that. The SIG 238. It's kind of like a super classy, refined Ruger LCP. It's a super small, subcompact 380. And when I say small, I mean tiny. If you look at these in an ad or on a picture, you really don't get an idea of how tiny they are until you actually hold one. It weighs 15 ounces, which is pretty tiny. But remember, it's a metal-on-metal gun. So it's very tiny. It's very classy. Not only is just the normal version fancy, they make all kinds of different color schemes and themes, if you will, for the SIG 238. Anything from like Desert Warrior. I don't know what Desert Warrior is going to use a little tiny subcompact 380, but hey, just the black and wood looks nice. They make the two-tone, which is a classic look. They make a stainless with black. Again, classic, classy. They make the Equinox kind of version, if you don't know. It's kind of a two-tone on the slide. Some parts are finished very shiny. Some parts are more black. It's a really good look. It makes a classy carry gun. It makes it even classier. You can get all kinds of grips for them, from like a Tiffany blue to the pink or like an ivory color. Again, if you want a little small 380 and you don't want to carry a polymer gun, you don't want the Ruger LCP or the Keltec P3AT, you think life's too short to carry an unclassy gun, you might look at the 238. They're beautiful and I think very classy carry gun. Now it has a big brother, the 938. It's a little bit bigger, but it's in 9mm as opposed to 380. I think, and I could be wrong about this, what they did is they took the 238, which is very popular, and they made it a little bit bigger to take the 9. It ran into some engineering problems. I don't know them to be very reliable. 238 seem to be pretty reliable for as small as they are. The 938s, in my experience, have had a few more problems, but hey, you're not getting this to be the most reliable handgun. If you were, right, you'd probably be carrying a Glock 19. We're talking about classy, the 938. Again, metal on metal, still very small. Bigger than the 238, but it is not a big gun at all. Kind of looks like a Commander 1911, but if you were to hold one side by side with like a lightweight Commander, there's only a vague resemblance. The size alone puts it in a whole different category. It's a very small gun. Again, it kind of looks like a very small 1911. It's not. Kind of has that same look. You like that class and that kind of old world metal on metal, that 938 is a good classy choice. Along similar lines, not really a 1911 but really small and kind of looks like a 1911, the Kimber Micro. Kimber is kind of known as the classy 1911, right? They're got really good marketing, really good ads on the back of a lot of the gun mags, if there are still a lot of gun magazines. I think a lot of them sadly have gone the way of the dodo bird, but for a long time, they were on the back cover of a lot of magazines. A lot of really good pictures of really classy looking Kimbers. The Kimber Micro is a little baby Kimber. And the Kimber Solo kind of looks like a space age gun. It is not at all a 1911, doesn't even resemble a 1911. But the Kimber Solo is a tiny, tiny little gun. And again, it kind of has that space age 1950s look. It kind of has a panache all its own. It's got its own kind of style. If you like that era, if you like that kind of style, that Kimber Solo, assuming it works, might be the carry gun for you. Here's one I think probably should have been James Bond carry gun. I think a lot more reliable, a lot better gun. We all know about the Beretta 92. I know I don't think that should have been James Bond's carry gun. Nor do I think James Bond cares what I think, because he's not real. But anyway. So, the Beretta 92, if you don't know, has a little brother, a little cousin, whatever kinship you want to ascribe to that. It's the Beretta 84. It's a little baby version in 380, and it's awesome. They are elegant, they are good-looking guns, as beautiful as I think the 92 is, a combat workhorse. This is an elegant, understated, adorable version of the Beretta 92. So if you like Beretta, if you like fine Italian craftsmanship, want something a little bit more carry friendly, the Beretta 84 is awesome. And if somebody was carrying that, we were doing like an EDC pocket dump, I would be like, now that's classy. Now, anything from Wilson Combat, you're probably going to consider classy. But some rise above the rest. I would think, one of the Wilson super grades. Super classy. It's got super right in the name. But Wilson Combat, it's a lot of different guns. I'm blessed to own one Wilson Combat. It's the Beretta 92. But their super grades are kind of known for that kind of high finish. We're talking class. So if I'm picking a Wilson Combat, and again, pretty much any of the Wilson Combats are going to be classy, then those Wilson Combat super grades are beautiful. Talking about high-end 1911s to a whole new level. If you're thinking, I might want to buy another truck, or I might want a 1911, you might want to look at Cabot. Cabot makes some of the most visually stunning, not just 1911s, but I think firearms, period. If you're into like exotic materials, mammoth tusk and meteorite and Damascus, the creme de la creme, your range sessions may consist of caviar and champagne. You drive a Jaguar to the range. And I'm not putting that down. If that's you, a Cabot might be the gun for you. They are gorgeous, gorgeous guns. I imagine for the money you're spending, they'll pretty much make you what you want. Make one called the Apocalypse. Just me and my kind of style. That's probably what I would choose. But the Cabot 1911s, if you don't know, are gorgeous. Here's one I don't want you to think you got to spend a ton of money to get class. I consider this like the Southern Gentleman after Reconstruction carry gun. Like, a lot of stuff might have been taken away. He may not be the best off financially, but he's a gentleman. And kind of in that category, I see the Charter Arms Bulldog. The Charter Arms Bulldog, it's still being made. They still make a 44 Special snub nose. I certainly like 357 snub noses. You'll know if you've listened. I like the J-frames. But if you're talking about classy, a fine leather holster with a Charter Arms Bulldog, again, that's class. You don't have to spend a bunch of money to get class. I think a Charter Arms Bulldog is a classy carry piece. You don't need meteorite or Damascus to be classy. You don't need ivory to be classy. I think a Charter Arms Bulldog is just a fine, effective, classy carry gun. Alright, let's talk about a different one. You want a full-size, refined carry gun, and you can shoot really well. You're an accuracy snob. You might know where I'm going with this. The SIG P210. Now, the original ones are classics. I think the newer version, the Target version, actually looks better. But you could carry one of those. And that certainly would be a classy carry gun. They even make one called the 210 Carry. Now, I think if I were going to get a 210, because let's be honest, you're not getting it because it's the most practical carry gun, right? This is not called the most practical carry guns episode. It's called classy carry guns. You'd get something else. I think if I were going to carry a 210, I'd want to carry the Target version. Perhaps one day they'll come out with a version cut for an optic. But anyway, the 210 Carry, or the 210 Target, or even one of the older 210s, they're classy. They always have been. And they are gorgeous guns. Alright, now let's go uber tiny in the carry guns. You may not be familiar with the NAA, the North American Arms guns. They make the super tiny mini revolvers, but that's not what I'm going to talk about. I don't consider them classy. What I do consider classy is their Guardian. It's a super, super tiny semi-auto. It's elegant. It's got micro elegance, let's put it that way. Also, I don't know if they still make them. They have some fairly proprietary cartridges. The 25 NAA, the 32 NAA. They're kind of little tiny bottlenecked cartridges. Think of the 357 SIG that got shot with a shrink ray. They're cool little cartridges, certainly classy. Certainly those little tiny guns are classy. So if you're looking for micro classy, that might be your choice. Also, you're talking about micro classy. Let's go back to days of yore. What was the super tiny carry gun for a long time? I'm talking teeny tiny. It was a Derringer. Well, they still make Derringers. There's American Derringer and there's Bond Arms. Again, these are not the most practical carry guns. I'm not telling you to get rid of your Glock, your SIG 365, and get a Derringer. I'm not doing that. I'm talking about class. And a nice pretty Derringer, just something about the sleek lines and even the way the handles look and the who cares attitude of a trigger guard. Classy. Again, Bond Arms, American Derringer Company. I'm not really any first-hand experience with either one of those. They're both classy looking. If you want a super tiny, a very small, very powerful, classy carry gun, the Derringers are kind of old school, micro, classy. Perhaps I left one off the list. Perhaps you disagree. If you want to contact me, goodshepherdtraining.com. There should be a link in the show notes. Again, trying a little bit different format. I don't want you to miss the tactical verse of the day, so I'm going to put that in, and then the bio, and then if you stay tuned through all of that, the tactical tip. Part of the 4th Psalm. But know that the Lord has separated apart for himself him who is godly. The Lord will hear when I call to him. Be angry and do not sin. Meditate within your heart on your bed and be still. Offer the sacrifices of righteousness and put your trust in the Lord. So, who am I? Who is this person talking to you from across the internet? Why should you listen? First and foremost, I am a Christian, a servant of God, and a follower of Jesus Christ. God has blessed me to do many things in my life, for I could do nothing apart from him. U.S. Marine Corps combat veteran, did a couple of tours in Iraq. As an assaultman after my combat tours, I was an urban warfare instructor for the Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. Also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. Also did several years in law enforcement, LAPD. I worked regular assignments and more specialized assignments. Been a private contractor for a 3-letter government agency. That's all I'll say about that. Been blessed to be a state rifle and pistol champion and West Coast Regional Rifle Champion. Won more shooting competitions with the talent that God's given me than I can actually remember. Was blessed to be the commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area. Our primary job, the reason we primarily existed, was to stop active shooters. I got the opportunity to head up and be the commander of that team. I grew up around guns, hunting and shooting and competing at a very early age. Been blessed to hunt all over this beautiful country, from whitetail on the East Coast to mule deer on the West Coast, and bear and elk and all manner of things. I've even been a professional big game hunter and guide. But again, most importantly, I'm a Christian. And I am your host, Michael Melito. Tactical tip of the day is going to be on hatchets. Yes, hatchets. I thought maybe classy carry guns wasn't your thing and you'd like to shift gears. No, I don't mention it in the bio. I don't think anymore. I did it one time in different versions of the bio, but I have competed in a lot of other things. Archery, muzzleloader, muzzleloading handgun, even hatchet throwing. When I was big into it, hatchet throwing, knife throwing, competing in it, I had kind of a custom handmade blade, but it doesn't really matter. I have a similar one today, and it's not expensive. Cabela's sells these, and likewise Cold Steel sells some similar versions like the Rifleman Hawk. I don't exactly know the name of the model that I have, but I just looked it up, and I think if it's the same, Cabela's has it where I bought mine. I think it's a slightly different model, but anyway, Crazy Crow Trading Post Throwing Tomahawk, $34.99. And Cold Steel makes some similar models. I've never owned one of the Cold Steels. But here's kind of the tactical tip. If you train with these, if you practice fighting with these, throwing these, you're going to break the handle. Right? If you're going to get a Tomahawk or a Throwing Hawk or a Survival Hawk, get one with just a straight, plain metal loop behind the head. When, and I say when, you break the handle, if you actually use this, not if, you're going to need to replace it. These are very easy to replace. They're very simple. Basically, one part of the handle is thinner than the other, and you slide it in until it stops. You take a rock or something and pound it down a little bit more so it's not loose, but that's basically it. So you're out in the woods, you're doing whatever, you break your handle, you can literally just find a decent sapling or tree branch that's of similar thickness, and you cut a section of it. You could even do it with a hatchet blade without a handle if that's all you have, but you probably have a knife or a saw or something if you're out bushcrafting or out in the woods. Cut that branch, that sapling, whatever, and you slide it in until it stops. And you cut maybe an inch or two above that after you've pounded it in there to give you a little margin of error. And you have a new handle. It might not be the best handle, but it'll get the job done. You continuously do that pretty much forever. As long as you don't lose that axe head, as long as you're in an environment with sticks or trees, you'll likely be able to make more axe handles pretty much indefinitely. That's your tactical tip of the day. Thanks for listening, men. Have a blessed day.